you're not going to hire a transaction coordinator that cannot add or subtract and doesn't know how to, you need to really dig deep to find the right person.
Loralynne, I think this is what we do really well, by the way.
I do too.
And part of it is because we screwed it up a lot.
Oh, yeah. Failing forward is like my specialty.
Some of these early guinea pigs, it's amazing they still like us.
I know. Well, we're nice.
Well, now they're millionaires. All right, welcome to another episode of the Contacts to Contracts podcast. Again, I'm Bryan Lovell here with Mr. John Jones, and we have back for round 2, Miss Loralynne Ball. Thanks for joining us again.
I have the same outfit on.
Yes, so did John and I.
That's because we didn't let you leave.
I just thought about that. That's like such a faux pas.
So did John and I. Listen, normally if you wouldn't have pointed it out, nobody would have noticed. But now everybody's going to go back and watch all the videos we've ever done.
That's
and
right.
see
and figure
that
out
John and I recorded 5 in one day.
It's different for guys. It's totally different. You guys could just change a tie or something and it's different. Like, this is like you were just saying, wow, she wore that dress twice for the same thing. That's crazy.
Let's see
the same day.
I've never seen you wear the same dress twice.
Right. Sorry.
Who's paying attention? You look good in polka dots, by the way.
It's as my son would say, he thinks I just shopped at Nordstrom's all the time, and that's why my job.
That's why he got into the mortgage business.
That's what he says.
Smart kid.
Yeah, he's smart kid. So listen, the last time we had Loralynne with us, we talked about specifically her origination career, and obviously it started there, but today, you're running a big business, part of a pretty decent sized lender in the head of sales. And I'll say one of the things that I said before, like one of my favorite people in the world in this business, I don't know of anybody who understands both sides of it the way that Loralynne does, meaning
100%.
Understands sales and the operations side.
100%.
When she calls me and wants to talk about the pipeline, I'm like,
I lose it.
I don't know. Anyway,
that's true.
That's a growth.
Right.
That's a growth opportunity for me. So, Lauren, I just figured we'd talk a little bit about, you started off as an originator. At some point, you made the decision to open your own business. And then ultimately, at some point, you chose to close that business and align with a different company. Can you just walk us through a little bit of that journey?
Yes. So I never wanted to own my own business.
Kind of fell in your lap, right?
The owner of the company, I had mentioned him before. Tom Mills was an amazing man, had an amazing office, number 1 in Florida, number 4 in the nation. He passed away unexpectedly at 56 and did not have anything in place. And all of the agents, the 1,000 that we had, were leaving and going to other companies. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of saw the ship sinking, and I stayed as long as I possibly could. And then I started to interview to go to work for other brokers, and I just couldn't find anybody that I just had a real peace about and that kind of was like-minded. And so I had an opportunity with a friend he said, I'll handle all of the business side of it, and you just do the work side of it. And I opened Tri-County Mortgage with him. It was fun. It was an amazingly tremendous learning experience. We did very well for about 4 years, and then the business completely turned. And I put my family at risk. I was literally paying everybody with credit cards and loans just to keep us together. Mm-hmm. And I just... I remember the day my husband looked at me and said, you're gonna bankrupt us, aren't you? And I was like, I don't know what else to do. And long story short, we got it back to where it was good, mm-hmm. and we were doing well. And wholesale lenders were not loaning. They were mm-hmm. shutting overnight. And if they weren't shutting, they didn't have the funding. So we would be in line to fund loans. And I couldn't give the real estate agents the service that we needed to give mm-hmm. and were used to giving. So I kind of raised the red flag as a broker and said, I've got to find a lender to align myself with. And hindsight 2020, I had no idea what I did. I didn't know the contracts that I signed. I didn't know the liability that would come from some of these loans that we made. And I know that probably, I'm saying...
You're talking from the broker side.
Yeah, that I was dumb or naive. But trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of naive brokers. There's a lot of people out there that are awesome loan officers that have no business owning their own business and or no experience or true support. So we, and Bryan, you were with me at the time, were looking for lenders to align ourselves with, and we ended up choosing a company out of Utah, flew out there, was going to join, and someone said, would you meet Tom VanDyk? He happens to be in Clearwater. Fast forward, I met Tom, and I was just like, wow, like this guy is a salesman at heart. And even though they were small, and I had never heard of them before, I just felt like we could really make a difference. Like it was going to be someplace that we could really, grow. And I say like-minded again because you should never go into business with someone that you are not like-minded with. So we ended up going to work with Tom. We had a branch. I had a small branch doing about 25 units a month. And the transition was, it really wasn't hard because if you remember, when we were brokering, we were sending most of our loans to the same people.
Yeah,
and it was because they could close them. It had nothing to do with rate, or it was service and relationship again, where we just had a relationship with our own team, and it was night and day the ability to give the service that we needed to give to the agents. It was such a freedom of, wow, now we can really go out and really close loans.
Well, I think there was some other things too. I remember that time, and there were some other reasons you were looking at. Like the world of lending was changing, John, if you remember too. Like, she's talking about you. What year did you open Tri-County?
2006.
So open Tri-County in 2006. By 2007, the real estate world is falling down around us, right? And
2008.
Yeah, 2000, and then. After that, because you didn't close down Tri-County and open a branch until the middle of 2010. By then, the market was starting to improve. But you were still like, hey, I don't really want to be in this broker thing anymore. Other than the service we were able to provide to agents by having control of in-house, were there some other things that made you feel like, hey, maybe I should get a little bit of leverage, a little bit of help?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was HR, I was legal, I was accounting, I was, training, recruiting. It was just, I was everything, and still trying to bring in loans to keep us afloat. So I just realized that you really, I hate to say the pun, but you can do one thing really well.
Yes.
And I was doing 27 things, half but, if you will. So I was tired.
Yeah. And at that time too, maybe not in 2010, but you were still the primary producer of the branch too, And so, yeah, to your point, to all of those things. And by the way, to keep the doors open, you still had to be out there, crushing loans.
You hear the saying, be quick to fire, slow to hire. You need to look at yourself when it comes to that too. Like there's things that I should have fired myself from a long time ago. You know what I mean? It should have been much quicker.
Yeah.
And I don't have any regrets because I learned a lot, and I've got amazing friends through it, but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And I was broker till you die. I mean, I was never going to be a banker.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So in 2010, you made the choice. You opened your own branch, came to VanDyk Mortgage, and you mentioned probably 25 units a month or so. But then it started to take off.
Yeah, because what doing this change did was provided a platform with no vices. Like it was originate, you know what I mean? And we already had the processors with us for our branch, and it was just how do we get into more relationships and do more loans? And so the focus became one thing, and that was that thing.
So how, eventually, and I don't remember when it was exactly, but I think like the best month we ever had was somewhere around 285-ish units
Yeah, I never made it to 300.
As a branch, yeah. Yeah,
We
well,
tried.
we went on to other things. But, about 285 units. But at some point, you got out of production and you started making some decisions that needed to be made if we were going to go to the next level. Can you walk a little bit through like what you were thinking at the time? And
Well, Tom VanDyk was a huge input on this because, Tom used to point out to me things like, he's got his name on every 1003, but he's just got a lot of hands. So that really spoke to me, and the fact that my pleasure was more pouring into people and the people that worked for me. Like I said, I had sometimes more belief in them than they had in themselves. So I really found that I needed to focus on that one thing more, and operations identify who could really run that I trusted and that was like-minded. And so it was really just to have a more narrow focus on what our growth strategies were.
Yep. So at some point you made a decision like, hey, if we're going to run an operation where we have operations as part of the branch, obviously sales is the driver, the catalyst, you had to separate the two.
Yep.
That was fun, by the way.
Yeah, you guys were. I had to keep everybody in their lanes. It was very important because it's just the natural growth pattern, right? And it's hard to decide when to do that. But I feel like it's when you just feel like you've lost control. When you feel like there's not enough hours in the day to do it all, you have to pick a lane and you have to focus. So at the time, I actually think I picked ops and sales at the same time.
It was right around the same time.
We chose Rich Passanante to run ops and you to run sales for our branch. And it was just, and again, Tom was a huge catalyst and advocate of helping every step of the way, but that made it be, I could give all of me to both of you, and then you guys could give yourselves to them, and everybody got more. Everybody got more of the best of what we had to give.
So let me paint the picture a little bit. There's a lot of loan originators or branch managers in whatever model or company that they're at across the country, and a lot of them have desires to grow a big business like you did, but also like the first move they always want to go to is, hey, I should get like my own processing, or whatever that leverage is on the operations side. And I think the challenge therein lies like, hey, if you're really great at being the rainmaker or the producer, how are you going to keep your eye on that? Because that's what keeps the doors open. Do you now also want to be the processing manager? So like that at some point that has to be made, but like that decision has to be made, but like where is that in the scheme of things?
Well, we laugh because, and Tom and I talk about this all the time, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the sale or the processing of the sale? You need both. You absolutely 100% need both to be successful. So I think, for where it came from me is, again, identifying that I was spread too thin. I was not giving my best to anybody, and needing to find someone that could handle those parts of it. But, I see it all the time, and I know it happens throughout our industry where you think you want to manage processing and you can originate because, it just makes more sense. But what ends up happening is you spend more time on the thing you're not really good at.
Yeah.
And then you notice that the people that you're leading don't really trust you or have respect for you because you don't really know what you're talking about or you're not really great at it. So then they lose that focus. So it is really a domino. And that's why I like centralized processing and things like that, because I don't think as a salesperson you need to be worried about that. I think you need to be worried about, where's my next relationship? Where's my next transaction coming from? The rest will work on itself with systems and models put in place over here. Yeah. And I mean, gosh, like when we were a branch, at one time it was marketing, it was sales, it was processing, it was, every single step of it, which is what I wanted to get out of as a broker. So I had to identify the people to take us to that next level.
Yeah.
We have a pretty good imprint, I believe, in when to grow your team.
Yes.
But there are a lot of branches on the precipice of, 50, 60 loans a month where they need to sit back and really plan and strategically look at who's going to be my ops person and who's going to be helping me with sales. And we see in our business, our company, several that are right there now making those decisions. And I know out in the workforce, there's tons of people that are at that point.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, it took me a while to catch your vision, right? And so we battled a little bit. And, because as the sales guy, I also kind of wanted to be in charge of the ops piece. And, we have a guy much more capable, by the way, who was in charge of, and by the way, he didn't want my job, but I was constantly getting in his lane.
Which is common.
Yeah. And I remember her and I at dinner one night, we were at an event, I think we were in Orlando, we were at an event, and I kept answering the phone and excusing myself and it was loan officers calling me. And every time I would come back, she'd go, "Who was that?" I would tell her what they want, and it would be something ops based. And she held her tongue for about 3 calls. And then she was like, "This is ridiculous," and that was when we had a pretty frank conversation about what my role was. And it wasn't that, right? And so for me, truthfully, like when I finally accepted it and part of it was like, I felt like if the LOs couldn't come to me with their solutions for things, that I wasn't valuable to them. And I remember that was the battle we were always having. But at some point I accepted that, hey, this is the way it was. And that's probably, like, me coming to that conclusion was probably what really helped us start moving on to the next level.
We see that battle
every
day,
week.
Every day.
It still
but
happens.
It's true. It just because, when we recruit to the fact that we have systems and models that will help make you be a success if you want it, right? So why don't we trust those systems and models? That's something that I'm always dealing with some of the regionals too, is like, if you answer that question, you own it. And I'm always telling loan officers too, just let's take the appraisal part of the transaction. If you get into the appraisal part of it, you now own the problem, where you're not an appraiser.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know nothing about the market, so you need to give that back to who does. And it's hard to do because, number one, it's total trust. We've done team building things where you fall back into, you got to trust your ops people totally. And that takes time. And vice versa. They've got to trust you. We just had a call this morning with ops and you guys to say, look, you are the leadership of the organization. You need to trust each other and be able to give each other the problems. But if you take them, they're going to give them to you. You're going to own them. And why? You have enough on your plate to own.
Yeah.
So it was hard. It's hard for me. It's still hard for me not to want to actually get in and fix every single little thing. But, surrounding yourself with great people and trusting them. And I see it with originators all the time when we talk about this. They're going to fail. You're going to build your team, and people on your team are going to make mistakes. It is going to happen.
And you're probably going to turn a lot of them over.
And you are. But here's the thing. Nobody's going to die. 35 years or 36 years, I haven't had one person die because of a mistake I made on a mortgage. And it's going to be okay. And to Brian Forrester will tell you, I always say, it always works out. It always works out. But I still go back to, you have to be slow to hire and quick to fire. And in the business the last year, where it was the busiest year we've ever had in 2020, I watched people putting bodies. I just need somebody. And that's such a mistake.
I think John and I we've been having this conversation a lot. We've been talking about the difference between dealing with the symptoms instead of dealing with the problem. We tend
Western medicine.
we tend to want to fix the symptoms, like, hey, by doing this, by making that hire, you said by throwing a body at it, I've dealt with the symptom, but you've never really dealt with the problem.
And how many times did we sit down in a conference room and map out a different plan? Like, as you grow, the plan totally changes, and you have to be willing. Another thing Tom had said to me is, I'm telling you what, doing 100 loans is going to be a lot easier than it was doing 25. Well, it is, but it isn't. You have to be willing to accept this model may not be my tried and true through ever. I might have to change it up.
That is the reality is, when you get to a certain level of business, you're going to have to retool your systems and models to break through the next ceiling. And he was right. When we got to 100, it got way easier to get to 200.
Yeah.
Getting from 25 to 100 was a straight up grind, But I think too, to that point, at 100, we had a sales department and an ops department. And I think not long after we got to 100, like, I was no longer also marketing. Somebody else came in and took over marketing. But in the beginning, I was sales and marketing.
But one thing I think that we did really well was everybody knew each other's job. Like, you always see me sitting down with processors and ops people and going through have you ever bought a house before? What did it feel like? And talking about like what everybody goes through, explaining to them the loan originator doesn't get a paycheck every 2 weeks. You do. What happens when a transaction falls apart? What happens when we don't close loans on time with elated customers? Everybody, like, you respected ops, marketing, and you each had a good understanding of what each other's roles were, so that we could provide, present as an organized front, unified front, if you will. And I think that was really important too. I loved that. Again, what I missed as a broker and what we have now is leadership, true people bringing leadership and ideas on ways to grow and things like that together. And you need that. I mean, coaching is important. Super important.
Yeah. And I think too,
this business, just jumping in real quick to coaching, absolutely, this is a mental grind. Yeah. I mean, this puts you, like, never mind the roller coaster of loans coming and going, right? But just mentally, it's an up and down. If you do have a tough transaction, mentally, it gets you frustrated.
Oh, I mean, it'll cripple you.
Exactly. You collapse.
Yeah.
And you talked about trust the system too. It's like, just go out and get more loans, right? Stop watching it sit there for a day. Somebody's going to get to it. Trust that the process is going to, gather the conditions. Stop looking at it. Nothing's happening.
Yes.
I mean, go and get more loans and learn to trust the system.
Trust the process. That's a big one.
Yeah. That's the hard part, is trusting the process, because when you first do it, you're doing it without a net. Eventually you realize, hey, we might mess up here or there, or like you said, like, hey, listen, nobody's going to die from this. Like, we always figure it out, but it's eventually you realize that there is a net there.
Right.
And when you go out there and you operate as if there is one, like, dude, you can really take off.
Yes.
I mean, trust is a huge, huge part of all of this. I mean, really. And you think about it, I don't take a complaint any lighter that there's one or there's 100. It's still a complaint or an issue that I need to deal with. But if you take a step back and you think it's less than 1% of what we do, it just happens to be that's my job to do that. So, I mean, it's definitely whatever system you're in, it's trusting it, believing in it. I mean, I tell you guys all the time, I believe in every fiber of my being that this is the way it's supposed to be. And I need you to feel the same way, or don't sell it. I mean, just don't. How could you sell it if you don't believe it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Loralynne, the business is changing a little bit. Obviously, you've seen it change over the years. And I got two questions. One is, like, where do you see the future of the mortgage industry going?
I mean, I've sat back with the threat for years that technology was going to take our place. And it's just like, I decided long ago it's never going to happen, because I know the value that I bring to the table. So, and I also know that no computer, no artificial intelligence is going to be able to sit there and analyze. Every single loan is different. Every single loan, every consumer, their spending habits, their saving habits, it's different. So take that off the table, that you're worried that technology is going to take over our lives. I think it's funny that the same darn thing that we've been talking about and preaching for years is still the same darn thing you have to do. And that's work your whole day and should be focused on relationships. That's, as a loan originator, wherever you are, your entire day should be focused on relationships, be it with the real estate partners, the borrowers, networking groups, whatever that is, that's what it needs to be. I mean, we are in a time right now where affordability is at an all-time high. That is going to change. I mean, it has to change. Subscribe to Barry Habib. You're going to see it's cyclical. So we are coming into a change. I mean, last year, you didn't need to do anything and you would get refis and, purchases, and it's not going to continue to be that way. So you have to focus on the business and not in the business. If you focus on it, you're going to be a success. And I think building a team is the absolute answer to long-term success, because you need to look at it like a business.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about building a team, though, that first hire for a lot of LOs that are at that breaking point where they feel overwhelmed, right? Usually that's typically the 5, 6, 7 units.
Yeah.
They're getting frustrated and they want to just throw a body at it. I mean, you always mention that you're going to work twice as hard for the first 90 days when you bring or take on that new person. Talk a little bit about that and how much you have to pour in, as you did with Justin Kelly early on, while still going out and doing what you have to do.
You're going to go backwards to go forward to a point.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, have a plan, because if you just hire somebody and you sit them there just to watch you, I mean, that's totally defeating on everybody's part. But you have to have a plan, but know that your job is going to be pouring into that for a period of time, and you're going to spend money on that, and you may go a little bit backwards to go farther, much farther in the future. So, I mean, I believe your first hire should be a transaction coordinator, and I feel that happens right around 6 consistently. Not 1 month, but
Right.
6 months. And I think that your first hire is a transaction coordinator. And then if you have a good one and you've set them up for success, that's an attraction to add to your team. Otherwise, what is a team? Why is someone going to join your team? You know what I mean? It's for your systems and models, and that system and model, that transaction coordinator is your right hand, and sometimes your right and left. So I think that's the first hire. And, give yourself enough time with each of those people, but use tools to identify if they're even the right person. I mean, you're not going to hire a transaction coordinator that cannot add or subtract and doesn't know how to, you need to really dig deep to find the right person.
Loralynne, I think this is what we do really well, by the way.
I do too.
And part of it is because we screwed it up a lot.
Oh, yeah. Failing forward is like my specialty.
Some of these early guinea pigs, it's amazing they still like us.
I know. Well, we're nice.
Well, now they're millionaires.
Well, we do it really nicely. And we don't always just let it into that was an epic fail.
But I do think that's why we do it really well now, is we messed it up a bunch.
I think don't get discouraged. You have to put in the work. And I also will say that some of you in the mortgage world right now are making more money than you ever dreamed of. Know that you need to be smart, and you need to save, and you need to live within your means or below your means, because this business will ebb and flow, and you don't want to be a statistic like the mortgage industry was in 2009, 2010, where people had foreclosures and bankruptcies and things. There's no reason for that if you truly plan and you run your business accordingly. Just like any business, you should save so much, you should have so much for expenses, and you should be really careful and diligent in how you respond to that. And that scares me. I mean, because of course I love everyone that I work with, and I just don't want them to get in trouble, and having been there before, it's like you just want to take them and say, make sure you're doing this right.
Yeah. And I think that's worth talking about. We'll kind of maybe close here, but there's a shift coming right? In the business that we're in right now. And, Loralynne, you've been through this shift before, not just as a producer, but also as a branch manager. What are some of the key things that people need to be top of mind about in a shifting market to get them through the change?
So first and foremost, don't stop marketing. Don't stop putting money into marketing. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is, I'm going to pull back on my marketing because the business is pulling back. No, this is when you go all in. So if you're spending money on marketing, you keep spending money on marketing, and that should be budgeted for you to keep doing. And secondly, focus on your one thing. You're not going to be able to process, underwrite, close your loans, and originate them just because you feel like you need to get rid of dead weight. Focus on your one thing. If it's sales, focus on relationships, and just keep doing that, and you're going to be fine. I made the mistake of not doing refis during the first refi boom. Which Tom points out to me all the time because I was so focused on purchases.
Yep.
It worked out well for me because when the market turned back around and purchases were there, I never missed a beat. But, a lot of originators focused solely on refinances last year and year to date, and you're going to be shocked if you don't get a plan in place to get your purchase business back.
Now.
It's probably late.
It's probably late.
And, we talked about rookies in the business. We see so many successful because they're willing to do all the things that we aren't. And that is what you got to be willing to do, all the things that the others aren't. And that means getting belly to belly, whether you got to wear a mask or not, and getting out there and really, letting everybody know what you do, selling yourself.
The ones that are doing that have already started doing it 4, 5, 6 months ago, those are the ones that are going to get market share when this all washes out.
Yep.
In the next 12 months, we'll have some teams that are going to take it from top 10% to top 5% or maybe even higher, because others will do exactly what Loralynne said and pull back.
And
it's
have one
human
more
nature.
thing.
I've been in it and I know the pullback because
Yeah.
I went through it myself.
Yeah.
And it is an easy reaction to say, hey, I can cut cost here. That's got to go. I'm going to stop spending or advertising doing this. It's human nature. So to your point, you've got to go all in right now.
And another thing, don't try to be the jack of all trades. I see now mortgage companies trying to get realtors to do loan apps and get paid. If you be good at what you're good at. I am not a real estate
Lord.
agent.
How would you have time to do both?
Why in the world would you want to be a loan officer? If you focus all of your time being the best real estate agent or the best loan officer, that's what's going to do it. I don't dilute your talent and don't try to become the jack of all trades. Either it by real estate and loans or loans and processing. Just stay the course and it will pay off.
100%.
Anything else, John?
No, I think.
Anything you would have wished we'd have asked you?
No, I think you asked it all.
So are you going to come back? Like, was this okay?
Yeah, this was fun. I like this. I can do this.
We
I'm
didn't
going to
even
wear a
talk-
different dress.
We didn't talk shopping.
Yes. Yeah.
You guys are they're just so mean to me about the shopping.
We love you. We love you. We really do. We really do. Well, Loralynne, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. I know that you're crazy busy, and but you dropped some straight up bombs. Today with us. So, hey, thanks again for tuning into the Contacts to Contracts podcast. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe, share, and on behalf of John, if there's anything that you need,
Thanks, Loralynne.
we're always here to serve.
Guys. This was fun.